Mr. Cox, perhaps also Mayor Becker, not until I became ranking member of the Surface Transportation Subcommittee had I focused on a big part of our transportation bill that I bet most of us don't even know much about. That has to do with roads through federal lands. Wyoming, I think of this issue because of Wyoming and Utah. In my own district, there's Memorial Bridge, for example, the gateway to Arlington Cemetery and to Virginia and all the southern states. But that's not included in your state allocation, and it should not be, because these are federal lands. As a result, because we have not paid as much attention to these roads through places like Yellowstone and Grand Teton and the Memorial Bridge that I just named, there is this huge growing backlog, which is not the responsibility of the state. I wonder, Mr. Cox, for example, if you, by the way, I assume that these federal lands are responsible for tourism and therefore for revenue to the states. I wonder if you would say something about the needs of federal lands in places like Wyoming. Do you agree that they're a critical component, albeit not in your state allocation, of the needs that must be attended to by the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Norton, from both a Wyoming perspective and an AASHTO perspective, we support both the federal lands transportation program, and I'll mention something here that adds to that, and that's the tribal transportation program. You mentioned the national parks, Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park, and we've also got many miles of national forest highway as well. Ensuring access to these parks and transportation within those facilities is clearly a federal responsibility, but I will tell you that it's the second largest revenue generator in Wyoming, the second largest industry. It's also important to support our nation's tribal communities. I just got a figure yesterday that there's just short of 600 different recognized tribes of Native Americans within the United States, and those tribal lands include a large portion of Wyoming, equal to the largest county in Wyoming. And I just want to, if you'll allow me to focus for 1 second here, I want to tell you a success story that reinforces our support of federal lands in the program. The collaboration between WYDOT, my organization, the Arapaho and Shoshone tribes, which are the residents of the Wind River Reservation, and Central Federal Lands led to a successful overhaul and construction of a road called 17-Mile Road, which was the deadliest, on a VMT basis, it was the deadliest piece of highway in Wyoming. And we just finished that last year, turned it over to the tribe. So it was without that collaboration from those three angles and without the participation of the federal lands program, it could not have been possible to get done what we did.
Mr. Becker?
Thank you, Delegate Norton, and nice to be back in my hometown. Appreciate your representation. As a former National Park Service employee, obviously these issues are near and dear to my heart, and public lands really represent 2/3 of the land mass in the state of Utah. The current backlog just for national parks, maintenance backlog, is $6 billion, and that has been growing. It is not part of the state and local funding mechanism, and so we see this increasing deterioration affecting, obviously, the incredible tourism destination the national parks represent in Utah and across the country. The recommendation that we've heard is that that funding allocation from the transportation bill be increased from $240 to at least $365 million with progressive increases to be able to keep up or at least start addressing this backlog in maintenance. And any of you who've traveled to national parks realize not only their beauty, but that their infrastructure is deteriorating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Becker. Governor McCrory, I wonder if you were mayor of a big city like D.C., we have seen an enormous increase in preference for transit, bike, and pedestrian trails. there's been some controversy. Well, why should highway money go to these transportation options? Have you seen, do you agree that allowing people to pursue these options draws significant amounts of traffic off of our highways and therefore are viable options in the transportation bill?
I think what they do is provide options, and options are always good. The more choice you have in transportation, the more beneficial it is to the quality of life, environment, and choices that the consumer have. And what we have in our statewide formula for our cities and towns, both rural and urban, are a variety of options that are put into the formula that are looking at how much does it relieve congestion, how much does it help safety, and also how much does it deal with the economic opportunities of that area, whether it be large cities or small towns alike. So we include all those options in our formula, and we think that's an important part. But we in North Carolina, I've tried to take the politics out of all those options and do it based upon a formula. And so we get the biggest bang for our buck on where we spend the money. How we spend the money in a city like a Raleigh or Charlotte might be different than how we spend the money in a Tryon or North Wilkesboro.
Thank you.
Thank the Governor. Mr. Crawford is recognized. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, I appreciate you being here today. Governor